Hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this month's episode of Pegasus. I am Dr. Brittany Moore Henderson, Director of Admissions and Clinical Instructor here at Mississippi State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. For this month's episode, we're going to discuss one of the various programs that we have here at the College of Veterinary Medicine. As you've seen before, there are many different programs that we have. But this particular program may touch a lot of different hearts, varies all over the country. So joining me today to discuss this program is Dr. Sharon Grace, Clinical Professor here at the College of Veterinary Medicine. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Grace.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you. So, Dr. Grace, before we get to talking about this program, because I haven't said the name of the program yet, but before I start discussing this program, let the audience know a little bit about yourself, where, you went to school,
okay.
And, how did you end up back here?
Okay. Well, I'm proud to say I'm a native Mississippian, born in Jackson, and started my public school education in Jackson, but I guess like a lot of kids, ended up having to move around with my father's job. So from Jackson, we went to Kansas City for a few years and then to Dallas-Fort Worth for a few years. And by the time I was starting high school, we moved to St. Louis. And I finished high school there in a really unique high school. I think there were about 6,000 students in the high school. It was huge, but made some lifelong friends. From there, I went on to college at the University of Missouri in Columbia. And I was pretty dead set on an ag career. And I took a degree in animal science there. About the time I was finishing, my parents had moved back to Texas. My dad worked for a Texas-based company, and they went to Wichita Falls. And I knew I wanted to go to grad school, and I started to look at Texas Tech, and that stacked up. I liked the programs, I liked the school, so I started grad school there to work on a Master of Science degree. And unfortunately, during that period of time, my dad passed away pretty unexpectedly, and my mom made the right decision for her to move back to Mississippi to be close to family. And I decided to kind of amend my degree plan to a non-thesis master so I could finish earlier and move back with her. And I moved back to Jackson and went to work and started meeting all these people. For the first time, I was an adult living in Mississippi and met a lot of people from state, and they kept talking about Mississippi State. Well, I had been disappointed that I could not finish the Master of Science degree. I wanted to do that. I took the non-thesis route to finish at Texas Tech. So I just said, I think I'll go up to state and talk to them about a PhD. And in the course of that conversation, I was meeting with Brian Baker, who was head of animal science, and he realized I really hadn't made up my mind because he was very smart about young people. And he also knew I was in kind of just a rough patch in my life. And he made me a beautiful offer that changed the course of my life. And he said, think about this. You're not sure about the PhD, and you're disappointed that you didn't finish your Master of Science. So why don't you think about coming to state and let's try again. So he said, I'll take half of your coursework from Texas Tech. I have a research project ready to roll out, and if you work really hard, I think you can do it in 6 months and then write your thesis in 6 months. So I took him up on that offer.
Wow.
And in the course of doing that, I met David Jennings, who was a professor at the vet school, one of the founding professors, and he ended up on my master's committee. And he kept talking to me about vet school. And I said, no, I just don't like the idea of all that chemistry and physics. Well, once he looked at my transcripts, he saw I'd already taken a good bit of chemistry and I didn't really need that much more. So I took like 1 semester and went off and finished up those prereqs and applied. And then I got in on my first application and finished in '87. By the time I finished, I knew I really had a heart for working with cats as a medical species. I'd always loved cats and always had cats, but I saw that as my career path. but I also wanted to specialize. So I really felt like internal medicine would be the best route for me. I didn't want to work exclusively with cats, but mostly with cats. So I went to Texas A&M for 1 year as an intern. I matched with them and was just so fortunate to have a great group of faculty to teach me how to be a young doctor. And then I came back to Mississippi State to do an internal medicine residency. And that was about 2.5 years. And then when I finished, I had to get out and finally do something with all of that education, go earn a living and quit going to school.
Exactly.
So I went to Nashville and with another person started a brand new practice in Franklin, which is a booming suburb of Nashville. And as the only internal medicine specialist for small animals in the whole city, it didn't take long until I was overwhelmed and working a lot all the time. And I really enjoyed it, but it was a little constraining in just being so tied down to the business. And I had a small child and I wasn't getting to see him much. So one of my mentors from vet school, Dr. Phil Bushby, called me and said, "Hey, I have a faculty position opening and I think you could be the right person. I'm going to advertise it and I want you to check it out and think about applying." And as of October of 2019, that's 20 years in the rearview mirror.
Wow.
And I have to say, in looking back at all that, it was a very circuitous route to get where I am, but I'm just so grateful to this university because Dr. Baker took me as a young person in kind of a difficult situation. He helped me figure out what to do with my life.
Exactly.
And then the opportunities given to me here at the vet school, not only as a student, but also as a faculty member, I've just been given a lot of freedom to pursue the things that are professionally and personally important to me, like the Safe Haven for Pets project.
Exactly. And that brings us to talk about Safe Haven for Pets. So pretty much this particular program was actually somewhat birthed out of your practice that you had in Nashville. So can you tell us a little bit of that story and how it came about all the way to Mississippi State?
Well, that's another circuitous story, but I will give you the short version. When I was practicing in Nashville, I had a client call me. I vividly remember on a Sunday afternoon, and she said there is a cat that has been very terribly abused at a party. The cat was very, very badly abused by a bunch of young adults at a party. And she was able to find the cat and brought the cat in to see me. And it literally just kind of took my breath away. So really looking back on it, the single most difficult and emotionally challenging case I've had. At that time, Tennessee was really trying hard to upgrade their animal cruelty status to like a felony status for the first or maybe second cruelty offense. And this cat became somewhat like the poster child for that legislative effort. It made the statewide news and eventually it made the national news. And there was a lot of interest in what was happening with her, but also with the legislation. So I did my best for 4 months, but she did not survive. And in the wake of all of that, I really struggled with a lot of just difficult feelings about how to process that. I happened to meet a woman who gave me some very wise advice, and she said, "Sharon, in a way, you're the second victim of the crime, but you have the power to rewrite the end of the story." And I didn't really know how I would do that, but when it was picked up by the national media, I was invited to Washington to speak as part of a panel on the veterinarian's perspective of animal cruelty. And it was really one of the first big initiatives to launch, I guess, toward public awareness of cruelty to animals and how that related to child abuse and domestic violence. And I went as a very naive person. I knew my little slice of the story, but I didn't have a very good idea of the bigger picture of how cruelty to animals fit in to other forms of violence. I met attorneys who specialized in animal law. I met an FBI profiler who said that was an important part of the history of people who were violent. And I met a social worker who talked to me about the plight of pets of battered women. And it just resonated with me. And I said, I think that's what I'm supposed to do to rewrite the end of the story relative to that cat. So I called, when I got back from the meeting, I called the director of the women's shelter in Franklin, and she came to meet with me and just told me that women who are in those situations where they're being abused will oftentimes not leave because there's no provision for their pets. The women's shelters, domestic violence shelters, typically can't take those pets in because of liability and fears of children being bitten.
Exactly.
So I just started to look into that, and I did that sort of on a pilot basis just as I was selling my practice, and took in a number of animals, not knowing what I was doing because I had no structured program in place. But then when I came back to Mississippi State, it took a few years, but I met the right people. And I happened to meet Leslie Payne, who's director of Carol Lodge Domestic Violence Shelter in Meridian. And we just developed this kinship and a commitment to try to grow some type of program to help her clients escape abuse by finding shelter for their pets. So we launched that program in 2009 and took the first animal in 2010.
Wow.
And I just returned the 71st animal to its owner last week, and 2 students were able to go with me. They were the students who'd actually cared for those animals, and they were able to do the discharge and return this lady's pet to her. So
wow.
As of that animal going home, we have raised all the funds. This isn't something the taxpayers support. We raise all of our funds, and we have provided shelter and medical care for a total of 2,500 days, give or take a few days.
That is so amazing, Dr. Grace. So this lets us know that, that our pets and women, like how that human-animal bond plays a role. And it also lets us see how much, our animals and other humans can be affected by these various things, but also us being able to see those things and also have our students to be able to see that and see the impact that that has, particularly when they go out into practice and, have the same things.
Well,
so
one of the goals is for our students to leave with the idea that they can start a small program like this in their own practices.
Exactly, and I'm glad that we're fortunate enough to have you, and you're able to help them as well.
Thank you.
So, if someone needed to know more information, how can they donate to this program?
We have an account set up through the MSU Foundation. I think that it is pretty easy to find online through the foundation.
Okay.
Otherwise, they could contact Jimmy Kite or Melissa Montgomery. They are our development officers here at the college.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Grace, for joining me to talk about Safe Haven for Pets. And as she mentioned, you can go ahead on. If you would like to donate to this program, definitely do so by visiting our website at www.msstate.edu. If it's the conclusion of this show, if you have any questions, suggestions, don't hesitate to email me at brittany.henderson@msstate.edu. If you have, like I said, you can contact me at any time. And I will see you next time here on Pegasus.